Alright, so I set up number 5 already for long division. And remember, we look at the first term and the first term in both the divisor and the dividend. And you ask yourself, what do I have to multiply by x squared in order to get 18x cubed? Okay, so that would be 18x. So 18x, and then you multiply 18x by these two right here. So I get 18x cubed minus, let's see, 18 times 4, that's going to be 72x. Notice I did not put it underneath the 3x squared because those are not like terms, okay? So now I'm going to subtract. And remember, when you subtract, you add the opposite. So this becomes minus, and this minus becomes plus. So now I'm ready to combine like terms. So this 18x cubed is gone, it's 0. Bring down the negative 3x squared. Combine the 72x and the 1x, so that's 73x. And I probably have to bring down the minus, the negative 1. Okay, we'll see right now. So now it's 8x again, x squared again, with, compare it with negative 3x squared. So what do you have to multiply by x squared in order to get negative 3x squared? So what number do you multiply here to get this? And so the answer for that is negative, oops, let me change the color, negative 3. So you multiply negative 3x squared, and then negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12. And so now we're going to subtract. So this negative becomes a positive, and this positive becomes a negative. Excuse me. And so now we combine like terms, so this is 0. Bring down the 73x, and negative 12 minus 1 is negative 13. So this becomes a remainder. Okay, so the answer is the quotient, which is 18x minus 3, plus the remainder over the divisor. So this is fine. In the instructions, though, they want you to, it says to write it so that you have, what does it say? The divisor times the quotient plus the remainder. And so you want to check your answer to make sure it's right. So you have, I'll just use distributive property instead of making a grid because it's a 2 by 2. So it's this one times this one, so it's 18x cubed, and then this times this, negative 3x squared. Then this times this, and that's going to give me negative 72x. And then this times this, it's going to give me positive 12. And I'm going to add the 73x minus 13, that is the remainder, so that gives me 18x cubed minus 3x squared. Negative 72 and positive 73 is positive x. 12 minus 13 minus 1. Okay, compare that to the original they gave you, and that's exactly the same thing, right? So it checks. Your answer is right. So this is correct. Okay. Alright, so number 6, same thing. We are going to look at the leading term out here and the leading term inside, and ask yourself, what do you have to multiply x squared by in order to get 6x to the 4th? So that would be 6x squared. Oh yeah, one more thing. I had to add, I don't know if you noticed, I needed to add a 0x squared because the polynomial didn't have a square term, so this is a placeholder. So when you're missing a power, you have to include it in as a 0. So 0x squared because the polynomial did not have any square term. Okay, so notice I've got 4, 3, 2, 1, and then 0. This is x to the 0 over here. Okay, so let's go back to finishing the problem. So 6, you multiply 6x squared by the divisor, so that gives you 6x to the 4th plus 48x squared. We're going to subtract, so that means we're going to add the opposite, so minus, and then this plus becomes a minus. And so now you combine, so this is 0. Bring down the x cubed, negative 48x squared, and then bring down the negative 9x. Okay, then you ask yourself, x squared has to be multiplied by what? So x squared has to be multiplied by something in order to get x cubed. So that would have to be x. Okay, so then you get x cubed plus 8x. We're going to subtract, so we're adding the opposite. So this is a negative now. Combine like terms, so this is 0. Negative 48x squared. Negative 9 and negative 8 is negative 17x. Bring down the 13. And then you ask yourself again, what do you need to multiply the x squared by in order to get negative 48x squared? So the answer to that is negative 48. Okay, so this is negative 48x squared, and 48 times, or negative 48 times 8 is negative, let's see, 8 times 8 is 64, and then 32 and 38. Okay, we're subtracting, so that means we're adding the opposite, so that becomes a plus, and this becomes a plus, and then this is 0, negative 17x, plus 13 plus 384 is 397. So this is the remainder. Okay? And so the answer, let me write it here on the side, is 6x squared plus x minus 48, here's the quotient, plus negative 17x plus 397 all over, let's see, what was the divisor? X squared plus 8. So here's the answer. Okay, and then the way they want you to write it is x squared plus 8 times 6x squared plus x minus 48 plus negative 17x plus 397. Oops, ran out of room. 397. And so to check your answer, you would multiply this by this, and then whatever you get there, you would add these two terms, and you should get, after you do that, you should get this back. Okay, so on test or quiz, I will ask you to do that. I will ask you to check your answer, so just like I did on the first one. Okay, and I'll probably do it for a couple other problems. Okay, number 7. Notice again I added 2 placeholders here because the polynomial did not have a cube or a square term. So I put in 0x cubed and 0x squared as placeholders. So now you have to figure out what do you have to multiply by x squared in order to get x to the 4th. So that would be x squared. So you multiply x squared times x squared is x to the 4th. X squared times 3x is 3x cubed, is positive, 3x cubed. And then 0.5 times x squared is 0.5x squared. So now we're going to add the opposite, or subtract, right? So this becomes a minus, this is a minus, this is a minus. And so now we combine, this is 0, negative 3x cubed, and then negative 0.5x squared, and you bring down the 6x. And so now, what do you have to multiply x squared by in order to get negative 3x cubed? So that would be negative 3x. So now we multiply negative 3x cubed, negative 9 x squared. Then negative 3x times 0.5x is negative 1.5x. Okay, we're adding the opposite because we're subtracting, so all of these become positives. Okay, so now combine like terms. This is 0. 9 minus a half is 8.5 or 8.5. 6 plus 1.5 is 7.5. And then bring down the negative 2.5. Okay, so now what do you have to multiply x squared by in order to get 8.5x squared? So that would be 8.5. So now we multiply 8.5 times x squared. That gives you that. And then 8.5 times 3. That gives you, let's see, 15, 24, 25.5. And then 8.5 times 0.5, that gives you, let's see, 8.5 times, I'm sorry, that'd be 25, and that's 42, so 4.25. And so now we're going to add the opposite, we're going to subtract, so that's minus, this is minus, and this is minus. And so I get 0 there, and then negative 25.5 plus 7.5, that's going to give me negative 18. Oops, I forgot the x right here. X. And then negative 2.5 and minus 4.25, that gives me negative 6.75. And so the answer would be, I could just write it right here. The answer would be x squared, this is the quotient, plus 8.5, and then plus negative 18x minus 6.75, that's my remainder, over x squared plus 3x plus 0.5. Okay, so that would be the answer right there. Alright, so for number 8, I almost forgot, sorry. Forgot the 0 at the end. Because there is no constant, so we put that as a placeholder. And so now you're going to ask yourself, what do you have to multiply 1/2 x squared by in order to get x cubed? Well, in order to get 1x cubed, I've got to multiply by 2x. Oops. Because 2x times 1/2 x squared gives you x cubed. The 1/2 times the 2 cancels out and gives you a 1. So now I'm going to multiply 2x times this, and so that gives me 2x times 1/2 x squared is x cubed. 2x times 25x gives me 50x squared. And 2x times 9 gives me 19x. So now I'm going to subtract or add the opposite, so that means I'm going to change the sign, so that plus becomes a minus and that plus becomes a minus. And so combine your like terms, that's a 0 right there. 250 minus 50 is 200. And 100 minus 19 is going to be positive 81x. Bring down the 0. And so 1/2 x squared, 1/2 x squared times something has to give me 200x squared. Well, when you divide 200 by a half, not by 2, but by a half, you get 400. So what I'm going to put here is 400, because 400 times 1/2 is 200. And so I'm going to multiply that and I get 200x squared. 400 times 25, that's going to give me, let's see, 10,000. And then 400 times 9 gives me 3,600. Okay, so now I'm going to subtract or add the opposite. So this is a minus, this is a minus, and this is a minus.